Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to the regularly scheduled Ways and Means Committee agenda for today, Tuesday, April 10th, 2018. And I have with me on the dais Council Member Cunningham, Council Member Johnson, Council Member Fletcher, Councilwoman Palmisano, and Vice President Councilwoman Jenkins. And we have a quorum, and we can conduct our business. And we will start with the consent items, and I will read them as follows. Item number 1 is a contract amendment with ICE Builders, Inc. for change orders to the Target Center ICE replacement project. And item number 2 is a request for proposal, RFP for the Convention Center and Target Center consulting pools. Item number 3 is a contract amendment with Egan Company for change orders to the Target Center network installation project. Item number 4 is a lease amendment with Minnesota Department of Transportation for city use of land under Interstate Highway 394 bridges. Item number 5 is a gift acceptance from Clear Channel Outdoor for display time. Item number 6 is a bid for mailing services. Item number 7 is a contract amendment with Riverview Windows, Inc. for lead remediation work correction to the previous council action. Item number 8 is an appointment position in the Human Resources Department, Director, Learning and Development Solutions. Item number 9 is a request for proposal for a web content management system for the city website project. Item number 10 is a request for proposal for community planning and economic development, financial portfolio, real estate and property management system. Item number 11 is a contract with Medical Priority Consultants, Inc., priority dispatch for the technology and support of the 911 call handling protocol software system. Item number 12 is a contract with Safran for maintenance and support services for the latent station fingerprint systems for the Minneapolis Police Department Crime Laboratory. Item number 13 is a contract with N. Harris for licensing, implementation services, and support and maintenance of the Enquester software. Item number 14 is a contract with Minnesota Home Ownership Center to provide administration and oversight of home buyer education and financial wellness services. Item number 15 is a contract with Black and VTech for engineering services for tunneled water main. Item number 16 is a bid for gate valve vault repair and replacement. Item number 17 is a North and South Sheridan residential area street resurfacing project, postponing levy of the assessment. Item number 18 is the Irving Avenue North Street resurfacing project approval and assessment. Item number 19 is a Lindell Avenue North Street resurfacing project approval and assessment. Item number 20 is Affordable Housing Trust Fund award for the Dundry Hope Block Stabilization Phase 2 project. Item number 21 is a grant from Mississippi Watershed Management Organization for summer interns. Item number 22 is a contract amendment with CH2M Hill Engineers, Inc. for Fridley Softening Plant Recarbonation Improvements. Item number 23 is a contract with Short Elliott Hendrickson, Inc. for Hennepin Avenue resurfacing reconstruction project, pre-reconstruction and construction management services. Item number 24 is the Wade Park 2017 Concrete Streets Rehabilitation Project to postpone the levy of assessments. Item number 25 is a gift acceptance from Green Minneapolis for revitalization of PV Plaza. Item number 26 is a bid for PV Plaza Rehabilitation Project. Item number 27 is a bid for cleaning of the large diameter sanitary sewer system. Item number 28 is a bid for hauling and disposal of agricultural liming material. Item number 29 is a bid for ready-mix concrete. Item number 30 is a bid for bituminous mixtures. And those are the consent items. Is there any discussion, my colleagues? And go ahead, Council Member Cunningham. Okay. All right. So I'll make a motion. I'll move and make a motion to approve the consent item. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? And I think Council Member Cunningham would like to add something to the vote.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just would like for the record to reflect my vote of no on items 18 and 19. Thank you.
Okay, so we voted all the consent items apart from those two items. So thank you very much, Clerk. And now we have an important discussion item, which is item number 31, the city procurement process overview. And this is something that's came up a number of times for the city to explain our procurement process, and we have city staff to come up and explain that. Go ahead.
Chair Warsami, if you just give us a minute, I've got the computer
Okay.
going
All right.
so that they can use their PowerPoint up here instead of on the overhead.
All right. Thank you very
One
much.
more minute.
So I'll just introduce the topic, if you don't mind, while Kelly is working on the computer, otherwise we can ad lib. So Chair Warsami, council members, pleased to be here today to talk about procurement, which is basically how we purchase all of our goods and services in the city. So we have procurement staff here today, Pam Fernandez, Tracy Reminger, and Mwende Zimbi, and they will be participating, several of them in this presentation, and feel free to ask questions as we go along. We're looking for your suggestions and ideas as well. So while we're waiting here, just a couple of things about procurement. So it can seem a little bit mysterious because it's complex. We have many laws that we need to follow, both state laws and city charter provisions or ordinance provisions related to purchasing. And all of those make it seem a little bit clunky at times, or that it's complex. But once you get into the inner workings, you find that it's very well defined, that we work within some very strict constraints as far as publication, amounts that require bids versus quotes. And we'll get into some of that terminology as well, because there's a difference between a bid and a quote and how all of those things work. It's also important to note that we don't work in isolation. We work closely with the city attorney's office and also with the civil rights department. So we work with departments to determine what services or goods they need. And then we rely on civil rights for some parts of the process. And also for the city attorney's office to provide guidance whenever needed. So it's not just procurement who is working on this, it's a larger process than that. So with that, I'm going to start our presentation. And procurement is responsible, as I said, for the purchase of goods and services. We're defined by or guided by municipal statutes, as I said, and also by the city ordinance. There are two city pieces that apply, Chapter 18 and Chapter 18A, which is the Target Market Program, which is relatively new, and we'll go a little bit more in depth in that as we go into our presentation. The municipal contracting law, this is what really defines how we purchase goods. The state law defines at what threshold we need to either have sealed bids, quotes, or we can go out in the open market. Anything over $100,000 requires a sealed bid, meaning it's opened at a specific time and place, and we'll go into that more in the future as well. And then the $25,000 to $100,000, we can either take bids or quotes. We generally require 2 written quotes for that. And then under $25,000, it's basically open market. There's also legislation currently working its way through Capitol to raise that $100,000 to $175,000. This $100,000 hasn't been adjusted for, I believe, about 10 years. That had been in place before the city of Minneapolis actually went to that threshold. Minneapolis maintained a $50,000 threshold after the state law allowed the $100,000 threshold, and that was just city's decision to do that. So if it does raise to $175,000, the city could choose to do that as well. There's also another law or another bill proposed that is working its way through the legislature that targets purchases for veteran-owned small businesses and other small businesses up to $250,000. That would fall between the $25,000 and $100,000 bid parameters or quotes, so they would only need quotes. Right now, that only applies to counties, so we're working with IGR to discuss how that could possibly apply to cities as well. So right now, as it's rolling through, we would not be able to participate in that, but we'll keep you posted as that moves its way through. So those are, again, the parameters that we have to work in. We don't have leeway here. We have to follow these provisions of the state law. And there's more to procurement than just purchasing as well, so we want to highlight a few of those things. We obviously buy goods. We maintain those contracts. So there are many, many contracts that the city has, and the procurement staff monitors those to make sure that we are not overspending those contracts and that we are meeting all the provisions of those contracts. We also pay for all of those goods and services, so we have a central requisition and accounts payable portion of procurement, and they pay for all of those goods and services. There's a purchasing card program, or basically a credit card program for some purchases, and then also central stores, which is a warehousing function that we have. So with that, as we get into the details, I'm going to turn the program over to Pam Fernandez, our Director of Purchasing. She will walk through the specifics of how we go about implementing that purchasing procedure. Pam?
Thank you, Lori. Good afternoon, Chair Warsame and council members. Thank you for this opportunity to come over here and present to us how we currently do our purchasing for the city. As you can see, this is a quick overview of how we do right now. There are two main segments here. One is the commodities, and the commodities, which stands for goods, any type of goods that we purchase, as well as construction. Those follow, a certain process, and then professional services follow another process. So, as you can see, there are two major divisions. It's under 100,000 and then over 100,000. So the under 100,000, anything under $2,500, I just wanted you to note that the departments can directly place that order with the vendor if it's under $2,500. They still will go through other regulations that we have, but they can do that purchase directly. So under 100,000, you probably are familiar with the program called Target Market Program. This is an ordinance that was passed in September of 2016. This is where we brought all the small businesses in the area together to compete for contracts that are under 100,000. So the advantage of this program is that they are not competing with larger businesses here. They are playing, it's a level field that they can play in. This is a race and gender neutral program for small businesses, and we have 13 counties, vendors from 13 counties participating in this one. A purchase is considered TMP eligible when we have 3 vendors to provide that particular commodity or service. That is how we are operating right now. Since it is our first year, 2017 was our first year, we're still looking at what other improvements we can make on this program. The city is not requiring any kind of certification for the vendors. They could just come in and say that we're doing this business, and they can enroll. We'll ask them to submit an affidavit establishing what they said. Again, and they will be enrolled into the program.
I think Councilmember Cunningham has a question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Why is it a race and gender neutral neutral program?
So under the federal rules, we are not allowed to do any race and gender specific programs at this time. So that is something that I'm sure you probably heard about our supplier diversity team that is working from under the coordinator's office. That team is looking at improvements, to this program, as well as doing race and gender specific programs, purchasing programs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there a definition of small business that you're working with? Who is eligible to participate in this?
So we have a definition for small businesses under Target Market Program, and you'll see that one in the next slide.
Okay,
here.
sorry, I'm jumping ahead.
No, that's
All
okay. So you'll see, so we reviewed a list of small businesses that are in the certification program, and we looked at the businesses, and how much they are making to come up with our own definition of what we want to call a small business. So when we look at that one, the professional technical services, we had almost 90%, and any amounts that you're seeing here is I'm looking at 90% or closer of the small businesses registered in the third program made only under 5 million. Okay, so that we took that one as our cutoff. And then for construction, you can see that we have 10 million. If you look at the federal small business standards, it's way high. But if we bring all those vendors in, then we'll cut off all these little ones that are trying to survive here. Manufacturing operations, we have 5 million, and what comes under that one is like sign making, electrical fixtures, the pipes and fittings, those kind of things. And then we have service operations, which is mostly our janitorial services, pest control type services, and food as well comes under the 3 million. Wholesale operations, which are those companies that could supply our safety equipments, furniture, and medical supplies. Retail operations are hardware stores, sporting goods, and pet supply. Those are some of the examples for what comes under that specific category. Any questions on that one? Okay, thank you. So the next one, you can see that our target market program vendors by business type. We have women-owned businesses, 500 of them are women-owned business, and about 160 of those women-owned businesses are minority-owned businesses as well. 160 of the women-owned businesses. And then we have minority-owned businesses, that's 340. One of the questions I get a lot is how many of these vendors are Minneapolis-based? So we have 1,245 vendors so far in our program, and 30% or 374 is located right here in Minneapolis, and 62%, which is 769 of them, are in Hennepin County. So these are data that we are looking at to make sure, like, where can we improve this program, or where can we take this program to?
Councilmember Cunningham has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Has there been any conversation? I know you said that you're looking more into having more Minneapolis-based businesses. Has there been any place-based or geographic preferences in this program as well, like that extra layer, or is it everybody, like there are no extra preference points, for example?
It's 13 counties right now.
And there isn't like any weight towards if it's in Minneapolis specifically?
There's no preference right now.
Thank you. That's one right.
Councilmember Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm thinking about that relatively low limit on construction, and thinking about the way the construction industry is oriented, and the union contractors are likely to be higher dollar. They tend to work on bigger projects. So I'm wondering if by putting the ceiling at $10 million, do we exclude a lot of union contractors and actually reduce the number of union jobs in the construction sector? And is that something that we've looked at?
So we are directing only purchases under 100,000 into this pool.
Mm-hmm.
So that did not become a question for us yet. So these are all, very small projects like drywall fixing, or something really small is what's going through the under 100,000. Everything else is a bid. So that's where mostly our union labor unions are coming in.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Vice President Jenkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You've mentioned it's race and gender neutral. There's a broad geographical sort of pool that we're pulling from, and the numbers are just really low for Minneapolis-based businesses. Have we pulled out the number of businesses of color that is being served by this target market program?
So we can pull that information. However, because the program is race and gender neutral, we
You don't
cannot,
ask that question.
we cannot do that one, but we can get that information for you if you're interested in knowing that.
But it's not a question that we are really asking, right?
No. We ask for all the information about, like what type of business they own and everything, but we don't specifically ask for that information.
Thank you. Mr. Ruff, did you have a comment?
Well, I think, Mr. Chair, Council Vice President Jenkins, you're asking a very important question. I think Pam's answering the question from the focus of the target market, right? We also have a major effort going on, as Pam mentioned, in the city coordinator's office to identify all spending that is optional spending for departments. And we are measuring for our spending how much of that is a diverse spend. And that is a report that a fair amount of effort went into with Pam's staff as well to identify that. And Jim Terrell, I know over in CPED, was very involved as well, because when we sell things to people, there's no box to check as to whether, what kind of firm you are, because it doesn't apply necessarily in all of our general spending. It only applies necessarily when we have our small and underutilized business program requirements under a larger contract. Okay. So a fair amount of work has gone into developing a methodology to track that, and also to identify for departments who essentially are lagging in that effort, some opportunities in terms of where there is more diverse vendors. The coordinator's office has demonstrated that to the departments, and will be tracking essentially how much they're making progress toward it. So like the target market program, that's brand new in the last year. It's still maturing, but I think there is certainly Nuria, when she was deputy, led this effort, and she has a strong commitment toward it. And so I think if there's a question about how just generally we spend our money outside of the procurement process, I would encourage the Ways and Means Committee to have a separate conversation about that, because I think Pam's giving you the answers within the definitions of target market, which is a little bit different orientation in terms of small business rather than a diverse spend. Does that help differentiate that issue?
No, thank you very much, Mr. Ruff, and I appreciate that response and understanding the additional work that's going on. And I wasn't a part of the formation of target market, but I mean, just on the surface, it sounds like we're targeting some market. And I guess what I hear you saying is it's a market of small businesses under $100,000 and that's the only criteria.
Right. That's correct. Right now, I think there is certainly, you as a new council have the opportunity to weigh in on terms of changes we could make to this. I think we would love to participate in that evolution of how we explore that thought. As Pam mentioned, we need to have the city attorney's office in view in this, because we can do whatever we want until somebody sues us and says you're not really complying with either federal or state rules. And so we probably want to avoid that. So getting them involved early on is a very important part of that study. But clearly, we recognize, we hear the same, and Pam hears it as well, from vendors which say, hey, we're based in Minneapolis, we're paying higher costs, property taxes, values are higher, our labor costs are higher, so why are you giving work to somebody in Chaska? I mean, so we hear the same thing, and we will certainly, if you would like us to, bring back to this committee some options, if that's a staff direction that you want to give to us. I would just encourage you to give us a few months to think about that process as well, and think about who else should be involved besides the coordinator's office with that, and certainly would defer to Eric. He was, he and the city attorney were very much involved in the target market, and can give you some background on that at that particular time as well. But it's an important issue for us. I think the other side of it that we always have in the tension of this procurement is competition, right? So the state statutes are encouraging us not to, to be fair and open about a process. And so what we've just, largely what you see in Lori's overview is that the decision is you should at least have 2 or 3 firms who give you an idea what the price is going to be, so you can be assured that there is a process where it's a fair and open process and it's a public process, so you're not just automatically selecting somebody because I happen to be friends with somebody and so I'm going to use my friend all the time for that. So there is some tension in that, in the sense if we limited target market for Minneapolis only, do we really have enough vendors to give that choice and that fair and open process? So that's the other tension that exists within all of this, that we are governed to some extent by state law within those restrictions. And so there's no easy way to do this, as in most things in city government, I guess would be the overview. And certainly, Eric, if you have some other comments on that, I'm not meaning to put you on the spot, but.
Mr. Chair, if there are any questions in the legal realm, it's pretty sort of a lot of different considerations involved, and it would be something that if you want to ask the questions, we could certainly get back to you in whatever form you'd like, whether it's a staff direction, sort of a formal response back, or if it's more of an informal one-on-one, happy to do it. But
Thank you. Any other questions?
No, just a statement. I mean, it feels like the target market is successful for some people, and I want you to get back to your presentation, but it feels like if we want to really address, small businesses, women of color in the city of Minneapolis, we might need like a target market kind of thing. So.
All right. Thank you very much. Councilmember Cunningham.
One follow-up question. Are the businesses that are the 374 that are in Minneapolis, has that been disaggregated by location by chance? So like north side versus
By council, wards. We can get that information.
I would really appreciate
Okay.
that. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Is there another question, Council Vice President? Oh. I have a follow-up question with regards to the 13 county region. How did we choose that? And are we limited by any state or federal statute to having or limiting the regional size?
To the geographical.
Yeah. So the 13 county.
We decided to go that way as a city as a whole, the team that was working in the project. So we didn't want it, we wanted to limit that to a certain area. And then one of the things that we want to remember is that a purchase cannot be directed to target market program if we don't have like three vendors providing that particular service. Okay, so that's the reason why in the beginning we have to go with that 13 county at least, so that we can gather these vendors to call certain purchases target market program purchases.
Okay. All right, thank you. Man, I see no further questions. Continue.
Okay, thank you. So target market program process outlined there. So we talked about this a little bit here. Anytime anybody wants to buy something that is under 100,000, it'll come to this target market program pool of vendors. We'll look at it to see if there are vendors who can provide us what we are asking for. And if there are 3 vendors who can do the service, we'll direct that purchase to those 3 or more vendors that are in the pool. Whether we get 1 response or 2 response, if it's a commodity, it goes by the lowest bidder, gets that bid. However, if it is just even 1 response would actually qualify them to get this purchase. So that's the good thing about it. A lot of the times, one of the issue with the target market program is that not all vendors are responsive. They don't want to submit a response. So we may end up with like no response, in which case it'll go to the open market. The program procedure sets that even if there is 1 response from out of those 3 or 5 vendors, we can award it to that one, which is a good thing to do. Any questions on the process at all? Otherwise, I can move on. Okay, thank you. So So here's the exciting data I wanted to share with you. The program is just 1 year old, and we were able to direct 11.1 million towards target market program purchases. And these are just under 100,000 purchases that went to this group of, this pool of target market program vendors. And then the other more exciting thing to share with you is that 14 million that you see above that one are over 100,000 contracts owned by the target market program small businesses. So once we identified this group, this pool of vendors, the good thing that happened was departments were able to see those vendors who's in that pool and then direct those purchases towards them. So even though our program sits at, purchases under 100,000, we are in fact, putting more purchases towards this pool, which is awesome. So the total that we spent with this group is 25.1 million last year.
That's wonderful.
Thank you. With that one, I just wanted to introduce Tracy Reimringer is our target market program coordinator. So she goes out to the community for all different types of vendor fairs, inviting the small businesses to become part of this program. So, thanks to Tracy. Next, I wanted to go to
Ms. Finette, 1 minute. Go ahead, Council Vice President.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Hernandez?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think this question may be for Lori, I think. But is there criteria for becoming a part of the target? I thought you said there wasn't. So
yes, there are criteria, and actually we handed out, there was a separate handout passed on to everybody that actually shows the criteria that we use to qualify vendors into this program.
But it's not necessarily a certification process.
There is no certification associated with this one.
But you do have to sign up to be a
Yes,
part of it.
they'll sign up and they will tell us like how much they make in the last 3 years, like the annual gross receipts. And that's it. We don't ask for any tax forms or anything like that. So it's a much easier process to get into the program. Once we get the application, Tracy will review that one to make sure that, and then Tracy will be in touch with that business as well to ask more questions about, sometimes businesses would come in and say, we can do construction. But then in reality, they would be doing something related to construction, but not real construction. So those kind of things we have to verify. And we do that for every single vendor that's in this program.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. So, so now I want to go a little bit over the over 100,000 purchases. Some of the over 100,000 purchases are made through the state cooperative purchasing venture contracts. And so a couple of examples would be the fleet vehicles that we buy. We buy it through the state contract. We get it at a really good price. Another one example would be computer, hardware, software type deals. Now, for anything other than that, commodities and construction, we do what we call a sealed bid process. So departments will prepare a specification of what they want to build or what they want to buy, and we put that one together with all our city terms and conditions and everything. Civil Rights Department will review every single bid to make sure that if there is an SUBP goal that they can put towards that one. And once they have done that one, we will publish that bid. So the publication is done twice in Finance and Commerce before that bid gets opened. And then we will also publish it on our city website. Our city website has about 4,000 subscribers to it. So anytime we put out an RFP or we send out an invitation to these bids, these 4,000 people are getting it now. So once that due date comes for the bid to be opened, we have a public bid opening for anything over 100,000. If anybody is interested in, watching that process, you're welcome to come to our procurement office. It's usually on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays at 10 o'clock. Some days there won't be any bid opening, so I would like to know if you're coming. And so we open it in the presence of vendors as well as any public who wants to come in. A lot of the times our subcontractors are present for that bid opening as well. So once that comes in, we will review the bid, the offer with our departments. And once we know, like, okay, this is a good bid, then we will take that one to civil rights for them to look at the SVP goals, participation by that contractor, as well as an affirmative action plan. So once those two are approved by civil rights, it'll come back to purchasing, and we will go through the award process. Sometimes a bid will require a contract, sometimes it doesn't. It will be a one-time transaction. Say, for example, if we are buying a fire truck, we just do a purchase order for it and get it. We don't need a contract. But if there is payment or performance bond or any other documentation that goes with the contract, we have to do a formal contract for it. And at that time, when we are doing a formal contract, like the many items that came through today, we will be sending a request for council action, and it will come to this committee for approval. So when do we bring those approvals to you? Is when the low bid is not accepted. Once in a while, we won't be accepting a low bid because maybe they did not put all the papers together. Maybe they did not comply with all the specifications we asked them to comply with. In that case, we have to reject that low bid and go to the second one. At that time, that bid request for council action will come to you. And then when the city receives just one bid, that also has to come here. It's what we call a sole bid. And when a formal contract is required, it'll come here. Whenever there is a change order necessary to a bid that we already took, for example, a construction project, we took that one for $1 million, but then as they were going in and started working, they find some problem with the site. They have to correct it. It requires additional money. So when that happens, it'll come here for approval. And the other time that you'll be seeing a request for council action is when we are using a contractor's form. That usually happens for software. With that one, we are going into the professional services side of it, and Monday, Simbi will be here to talk about that one.
All right, thank you.
Any questions so far?
Council President, Vice President Jenkins? All right.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Chair Wasami, council members, I am going to take over and talk about the professional services at the city. And I'll start by saying that what Pam was talking about, the sealed bids, that process is centralized at procurement. We do all the sealed bids for the city departments and Park Board too. So the professional services one is more decentralized. This work happens at the departments. Procurement gets involved on at the back end when the contract has been drafted and it's sent to us for signature and entry into the financial system. So I'll talk about the request for proposal. So once a need is identified as at the department prepares the RFP, the request for proposals using the current standard template. And then as they do that, they take the scope of services for that work and send it to civil rights, because everything over 100,000 has to go to civil rights for them to set goals, to see if goals are applicable and set them. So when that happens, or in the process, it could happen concurrently. Once they set the RFP and put the scope of services together, it all culminates at the PRC, the Permanent Review Committee. All that information is brought to the Permanent Review Committee. The PRC meets on a biweekly basis, and I will be talking a little bit more about the PRC in the next slide. So when that RFP is brought to PRC will either approve it or give recommendations on how to move forward with that request for proposal. Once that is done, that information is provided. The department sends the complete revised RFP to procurement. We have a central publication of the RFP on our procurement external site. Then all RFPs come to procurement, all the proposals come to procurement. Again, that is centralized. When we receive them after the close date, all that the proposals are all sent back to the department. They do the evaluations. They're in charge of the review of those proposals. They pick the vendor that they need that can do the work, and then they also have to go back to civil rights to make sure that the affirmative action plan is in place and they get civil rights approval. One of the things I want to highlight here is that for the professional services side, unlike the bids where we go with the lowest bidder per the Minnesota statute, for professional services, we do not go by the lowest price. We have other considerations other than the price. They have to be able to do the work. They have to be able to show that they can meet the time frames of the work. So it's not just the price that we go by, but price is a determining factor that departments use to evaluate the proposals. The Permanent Review Committee. So PRC was established in 1992 through the City Council, and it was established to oversee the issuance of all citywide RFPs. Before, every department was issuing their own RFP, but there was need to centralize that function where the Permanent Review Committee reviews those RFPs to make sure that they're consistent, and also to make sure that the processes, procurement processes are being followed. The PRC is chaired by the city coordinator or the city coordinator designee. As of today, that designee is the procurement director. So Pam chairs the PRC, and the PRC meets on a biweekly basis. The PRC is represented by several members from the departments. We have the city coordinator's office has a representative sitting on the PRC. Civil rights is on the PRC committee because they have to be there to review the scope of the work to ensure that if the work is over 100,000, that goals have been set, to provide their concerns of if they know of any businesses that can subcontract. And also CPED recently was added to PRC in 2017 because we have a lot of work, contracts coming from CPED, but for the longest time since its inception, we didn't have anyone from CPED. So right now we have someone sitting from CPED sitting on the PRC committee. Then we have finance, we have procurement and risk management, because again, we have to assess the risk and the liability to the city by issuing these RFPs. We have a representative from the Office of the City Attorney, and we also have Public Works because we have a lot of RFPs from Public Works that need us, that are very specialized, and we felt we needed someone, an engineer sitting on the PRC committee to provide their input, especially when we have construction contracts coming through. So PRC currently approves all RFPs valued under 1 million, but any RFP that is over 1 million, before procurement publishes it, it has to be approved by the city council. So again, before it is, we publish it on our website, we have to see council approval on all RFPs with a value over 1 million. Quickly going through some of the goals of the PRC to improve efficiency and quality of city services, making sure that the specs, the specifications, and the scope of work is defined in a clear way that is of benefit to the city. Then also to define and follow sound business practices, and also to analyze risk. Like I said, we have someone from risk management sitting on there to be able to look at those thresholds in the terms and conditions of the RFP. We've had situations where the department negotiates the caps on the insurance, because sometimes if it's a construction contract, those values would go up. If it's professional service, maybe for temp staffing services, they might need a lower threshold because they expect that the composition of the respondents to that RFP will mainly be from the target market program. So we're able through PRC to set appropriate levels of insurance.
Okay.
Then
What-
also,
Sorry, 1 minute. I didn't want to interrupt, but I have a question from Councilmember Cunningham.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask a question because according to one of my constituents who went through this process, he had secured the lowest bid, and you had talked about making sure that they can do the job, and that was a part of the process. He said that when folks came to do the review, they're like, well, you don't have the capacity. And he was like, well, I'm going to scale my capacity once I am able to secure this contract and have the money to be able to scale, because he was a small business. And so he ended up losing the contract. And so I'm just curious about how do we help make sure that folks aren't maybe falling through the cracks that are trying to grow their business and maybe aren't at the scale, but can do so once they does that make sense? Mm-hmm. It's just like I just want to see, because that was a Northside owned business. So I just wanted to ask, how do we make sure that we're not having folks fall through the cracks?
Thank you for your question. So that's one of the efforts we're doing right now with the bigger supplier diversity group, where we're looking at the processes that we have right now. I'll be talking a little bit about us going through an automation process. We're automating our whole procurement process. One of the things that we'll be doing is procurement is going to be actively involved in the responses that come in and the whole contract process. Right now, this piece is very decentralized at the department. So the best practices that we have for them is to review what is responsive and responsible and then go with that. So we are not really involved in the process, but moving forward, we're looking at what else can we do to support the departments to provide more training on that evaluation piece. We have recently engaged Harvard Business Kennedy School through the What Works Cities initiative. And that was an initiative through the city coordinator's office. And they're currently looking at our RFP process, our evaluation process, to see how we can intentionally include these small businesses where our evaluation criteria is not onerous to them and is not disadvantaging them. They're concluding that work at the end of this month, and we'll be getting the best practices report from them the first week of May. So we'll be able to report on that. And after that, we'll be rolling that out to the departments. But yes, it's an issue that we've seen before, and we are committed to address it.
Thank you so much for that information and all the work to be able to bring in those extra resources too. So thank you so much.
Go ahead.
The other thing that PRC helps with is conformance of all city policies and ordinances. This is really where PRC can help push back on some of the practices that we don't have oversight over through our policies, and looking at the federal guidelines, what are we being in conformance with those, and we're able to advise the departments accordingly. Then also really ensuring standard and consistent ways of reaching out to the vendor community, where everything is being published through the website. We've reviewed making sure that the RFP, to make sure it's a good RFP out there, because it is really a representation of who we are as a city. I'll move on to the automated bidding and contracting, and this is what we're calling our whole automation project of procurement. Right now, everything is paper-based. From vendors applying for work to contracts being routed, collaboration within the departments. Departments are actually having to send paper copies from their office to the city attorney's office for signatures, or even walk them if it's urgent, and then walk them to our office in procurement for the final signatures. And we're also not being able to capture a lot of data that we would like to share. So this automated bidding and contracting project was approved in 2016 by City Council. And we have a go live date of January 2019. So we are in the process of, we started the work last year, late last year, and this year we are actually close to finishing the specifications and drafting what that future workflow is going to look like. This work consists of 3 modules: e-supplier, which is outward facing to the general public. This is for our firms, it's for businesses, it's for anyone who wants to do business with the city of Minneapolis. Strategic sourcing and supplier contracts are more internal. Strategic sourcing, where evaluation of the responses that we get in is going to be done in the system, and it has to functionality to quickly evaluate who are the vendors that we can work with. Supplier contracts is more of the document management library, and electronic signatures are a big part of it, where we'll be able to move the work through the system. Tracking and reports will be a highly craved feature all across the city. I'll go into a little bit more detail on the e-supplier, because this is an area where we've been getting questions on. E-supplier, as I said, is outward facing. It's to the general public, to our businesses. We had a pilot done in January of 2018 that was very successful, and we are having a partial functionality rollout at the end of April, where we are going to convert all our current vendors into this system. All they'll need to do is go in and update their information. It's a self-service portal, where right now, if you want to become a vendor, if we award you work either through bids or professional services contracts or through an RFP, businesses have to send us a vendor application packet. That is a paper that they have to fill out and send it to us. Then accounts payable team keys it in and sets them up as a vendor. Now they'll just need to log into this portal. They'll enter their information, and then once they hit submit, it's going to go through approvals through the city, and they'll become vendors. They'll be able to update their information on there. Right now, again, they have to call us or send us the vendor application packet. They'll be able to do it in the system. It will provide for easy registration into the target market program. As you heard Pam describe, we intentionally made it very easy for businesses to be a part of this program. So with the module, with eSupplier, we have 2 levels of application where they can just become a bidder, not provide any onerous information. They're just going in and telling us what categories of work they work in. We'll capture that, and when we get the request from the departments of work that needs to be done, we'll go into the system and we'll be able quickly to pull up all the vendors that do. Maybe if we have a request for appraisals from CPED, we can quickly go into the system and type in appraisals, and it will pull all the vendors registered for that work. And we can, if they're target market program vendors, then we can directly source to them, send out an email targeted to them saying, this is what we're requiring. We need to hear from you within this time frame. Tell us what price it is going to be. So it's very targeted. It's going to be very fast. They will respond through the system, which means we'll get the information that we're requiring. And then we'll be able to award again through the module, where they'll get the contract and they'll actually sign electronically sign a contract. Whereas now we're sending them the contract and we're having them print 3 copies, sign each of them, and mail those back to us. So that is something that they're excited about. One of the advantages of the e-supplier is that businesses will be able to log in and see their executed contract, like I talked about, but they'll also be able to see their purchase orders, invoices, any pending payments that have not been paid, whereas right now they cannot. They don't have that information. So it has a lot of benefits, the e-supplier, and we are excited to roll it out, partial functionality end of this month, and then the full functionality in January. The next slide is a brief summary of what we did for our 2017 vendor outreach. This is when we were implementing the target market program. We had a robust outreach plan to market the target market program, because when the target market program started, we did not have any vendors as of January 2017. And so we really wanted to make sure that we populated that marketplace, so that as requests come in from the departments for work, we have at least 3 vendors for each category, because as Pam said, a purchase is deemed to be target market eligible if there's 3 or more vendors in that who can provide that work. So we sent out a little bit over 9,000 mailing cards to current vendors, both at the city and from CERT. CERT is a certification program that is run by the city of St. Paul, and as part of the target market, inception of target market program, City of Minneapolis through target market program became a member of CERT. CERT has 4 partners: City of Minneapolis, City of St. Paul, Hennepin County, and Ramsey County. So we became the 4th partner, and so we're able to take a look and utilize the vendors that are registered in the CERT database. We also developed a communications toolkit that we shared with 82 partner organizations, and also with internal leadership, so that they can help us spread the word. I also have to say that the city coordinator's office was very helpful with this. The innovative team was working with procurement to make this happen. We were able to attend 17 events, which included neighborhood workshops. We presented at chambers of commerce. We went to procurement fairs, and also at the community connections conference. So we did a lot of outreach, trying to not only market the target program, but reach out to the vendors to hear what they have to say about doing business with the city. And lastly, we have plans for the 2018 vendor outreach efforts. Through CERT, we are having this ongoing monthly workshops where we are meeting in St. Paul. CERT through City of St. Paul have this monthly meetings scheduled with vendors at the Rondo Library. And after having been a member for 1 year, we're now looking at bringing those to this other side of Mississippi. So Hennepin County and City of Minneapolis can host also monthly workshops to run concurrently with the ones over in St. Paul, in the hope of reaching more vendors, because the ones that are in Hennepin County, Minneapolis, have to go all the way to St. Paul to get this service. Then we're also planning some robust training and change management through as we roll out the new automated process, where we'll let them know how to do business with the city and how easy it's becoming, and how we are planning on it being very targeted, and all those intentionalities that have been built into it. We are also in the process, we've already attended some of these trainings and fairs where we're meeting with vendors and again, telling them what we're doing and to join the target market program, and getting ideas from them too on how we can better make our process. So as part of that, we are working on increased collaboration with various people. First of all, in the outreach we did in 2017, we heard a lot from vendors of how procurement goes out to these vendor fairs, but we are not the ones that ultimately make decisions on who is going to be awarded. It is the departments. So vendors are looking for a space where they can actually meet with the departments who are the decision makers. So we felt that that is something that procurement can facilitate, to create that space where the departments can meet with vendors and they can have that conversation about what they do and familiarize themselves with the work that each of them does. We are also targeting community organizations and collaboration with professional associations. Some of the ones we're looking at, and we had some discussions around this issue late last year was the Association of Women Contractors, Association of Minority Contractors, and Associated Builders and Contractors. So we want them to help us spread the word about the target market program, and so that as we run this program, anytime requests come from the department, we have vendors in the program that can do their work. That is an area where we have seen it's been challenging, where work comes in, but we really don't have 3 or more vendors in the target market program who can do the work. So it forces us to push that out to the open market. And so the 2 vendors who are registered in the target market program are now at a disadvantage because they have to compete in the open market. So if we have, our goal is to have at least 3 vendors in all categories, so that work can really stay within the target market program. Also, the other thing that we'll be looking at is in working with the professional associations is for them to help us unbundle the scopes of work, especially for RFPs that are over 100,000. This is something that we saw Hennepin County do successfully, where they worked with Association of Minority Contractors, and they would, every time there was work at the department, they would have a meeting with these professional organizations and really have a discussion with them on how they can help them unbundle this scope. So it's not one huge scope that is just going to this one big contractor, but if it's unbundled, then it can go to other small businesses. And because they work with those small businesses, they know who they are. And if they're in the target market program, then it increases the opportunities for them. We have increased collaboration too with the city supplier diversity efforts. And Pam talked a little bit about that, but one of the exciting things that we're looking at, and this is right now in the exploration stage, is about the target market program. So right now, target market program is for all small businesses, but we're asking, what about creating a subset, carving out, let's say, up to 50,000, that is only going to go to small, women-owned, minority-owned businesses, and the target market program. So that is something that we're already discussing, and we do know that, yes, the target market program right now is race and gender neutral. That's how the ordinance was written. But we're working with the broader supplier diversity, and the city attorney's office is part of it, to see what it is we can do right now to get there. We know that Hennepin County is doing the same thing. They're actually at a more advanced stage than we are. So we're kind of watching them to see what path they took, and see if we can do the same thing where it's more intentional. And so we'll be reporting on that as we kind of look into that. Then the other part of it is one of the things that we are looking at within this bigger supplier diversity is creating a pool, a master contract pool for vendors with who are just women and minority-owned businesses. So let's say right now we are doing one for temp staffing, where we put out an RFP for temp staffing, businesses propose, and then we enter into contract maybe with 10 of them. So we create that pool. So at any time when there's a temp staffing work, we have contractors where businesses, departments can go to. So the question is, how can we use that same model, but just to create a pool of contractors for specific scope of work, just populated with minority and women-owned businesses. We're also looking at local and price preference. The city doesn't have that. And we feel strongly that with the results of the 2016 disparity study, that is something that we can achieve. Because we've been hearing from businesses that, well, I have a business in Minneapolis and my overhead costs are higher than a business up in Stearns County or a business up in Wright County, because I have to pay the FISC cost and, a minimum wage and all those costs, while others don't have to. So they really want a preference for them to be able to get more work with the city. So that's something that we're also considering and looking at. Through CERT, City of Minneapolis being a member of CERT, we are also looking at cross-jurisdictional efforts, where what is it that we can do together with our partners in Hennepin County, City of St. Paul, and Ramsey County. And one of the ideas that came about was implementing the 2016 disparity studies and see how we can help each other achieve that instead of each jurisdiction doing it on their own. And so the goal of all this is really to create awareness of the target market program and to increase the number of diverse vendors enrolled in the target market program. And lastly, we also, again, this year, we're going to do a survey. We heard from vendors, from businesses, that they want to be a mechanism for them to provide feedback to procurement on how we can make the work better, or how we're doing, or just performance evaluations, performance measurements. And so we'll be doing that as well as a focus group. And this is going to be in line with what we did last year that was led by now city coordinator. It was very successful, and we want to be able to get that feedback again. So, and also but tying back to the feedback request, it ties into what Work Cities project with Harvard Business School is doing, because it's all focused on performance measurement and how we can be able to articulate that we are being successful in those areas of improvement that we need to work on.
All right. Thank you. Is there any comments, discussions? Councilmember Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Simby. One question I have, I guess, is how hard is it to apply to the target market program? It feels like the number of participants is relatively low for that big 13 county area. So I'm wondering if it's just that we haven't had time to get people signed up, or if it's actually fairly burdensome to become involved.
It is not burdensome. I think a lot of it is about just getting the word out. We did a lot of engagement in 2017 just to get the program running. We are at 1,200 in 1 year, so it was a lot of work that was done. But I talked about some cross-jurisdictional efforts that we're doing as members of CERT. Right now, CERT is at about 1,800 members. So that's a tool that we can use. And now with Tracy on board, and she's full-time doing this work, we're now going to be looking into the CERT database and seeing how can we get these businesses on here into the target market program. One of the things that I have seen as a challenge as we've been talking to businesses is they're skeptical about the success of the program or the intention of the program, or is it just another program? So, but we've been, as we talk to them and as we show them the intentionalities that have been built into the program, like, for example, you don't have to log into our website to see what work is out there. If you're in the target market program, we will find you. We will send you an email. We will tell you that we have this work available. Please apply for it. That came up today. We had a pre-proposal conference for the temp staffing RFP I mentioned, and we had some businesses in the target market program. It's a huge RFP, and they were asking, there's a question about is it really, are we really sure that we're going to award a target market program vendor because they feel they're competing with all these big businesses? And we said, yes, actually, we want target market program vendors to apply. The way we put the RFP together, and this is just a pilot of what our other RFPs are going to look like, with the goal of making them less intimidating for small businesses, and also providing in language in there that if you don't have experience, show us how you can get the work done. Don't worry about that experience. Just show us how you can get the work done, and we'll kind of go through the evaluation criteria and the proposals to see how we can assist you. So it's that skepticism that really, is this for real? And that's what we need to address and keep on addressing it from all angles, partnering with the innovation team, partnering with our neighborhood organizations, with NCR, and looking for any avenue within the city, within the whole model of doing business with the city, business made simple, to make sure that we are communicating the same message, that it's not just procurement, but in all these outreach efforts, we are communicating that message, and that way we'll get more people to sign up. There are many businesses out there that we need sign up.
That's great. Thank you. I have one more
Follow
question,
up.
if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
A lot of the requests that come before us in Ways and Means have multiple numbers associated with them. So either they start off very small, so it might be a $40,000 initial purchase, and then they come back with a contract modification that would move it out of the $100,000 range. Or we see a lot of contracts that say probably about $80,000, not to exceed $140,000. And so I guess my question is for not to exceed $140,000, is that in the target market program or not? And how much is their discretion for the department, for whoever's writing the request, to sort of decide whether they're in the target market program or not, based on a lot of these professional services bids, especially, that don't necessarily end up with a clear dollar amount, if it's something we're paying hourly for.
Right. So that's a good question. And so what we were seeing that was happening a lot, where a contract would start low, but then it would grow past that threshold, the 100,000 threshold. And that is a disadvantage to those in the target market program, because we'll end up with this big business. Or so what we've started doing driven by the target market program, and some of these contracts are phasing out that we're talking about, where we've told the departments that they cannot contact a vendor. They cannot contact a vendor for any work that is under 100,000. And we have deliberately kept that marketplace with procurement, so they have to reach out to us to see who's in the target market program. As they come to us, if the value is 40,000, we're making it clear to them that if there's any possibility of this work going over 100,000, we're going to bid it out. It's not going to be in the RFP. It's not going to be in the target market program. We have to use another path, because we do not want to disadvantage those in the target market program, where it's starting at 50,000 and then it's going to grow to 200,000 just with that same vendor. Also, for the target market program, for the purchases under 100,000, they have to be for the whole project. You cannot phase it out. We've had situations where it's a 5-phase project and each phase is 50,000. So we're saying no to that. That cannot be a target market program, because and a lot of them, when it starts that way, we realize that it's not even a target market program vendor that would get the work, because it's a big project. It would be out of scope for target market, so we would have to push it out to the open market. And once we push it out to the open market, it goes all the way to 300,000, and then the target market program vendors are at a disadvantage. So that's going to be addressed by this unbundling, where now we'll be able to chunk it to where it's single work that is within the framework of the target market program.
Okay. Well, this is complex work, and I really appreciate the presentation, and I really appreciate the work that you've all put in. We rely on it very heavily on the Ways and Means Committee as we're looking at all of these proposals that we don't always have a lot of detail on. And I'll say the faith that we put in all of you to make sure that we're spending our money responsibly and in ways that reflect our values and our commitments around equity are really appreciated. So let's keep looking for ways to do it better, and thanks so much for the work you're doing.
Thank you, Councilmember Cunningham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all so much for all the work you as well, City Coordinator, for all the work that you've put into procurement and to building the target market program. I was around during its inception and watching it come to life, and to see that it has over 1,200 vendors already in it in the first year is really impressive. And I'm really grateful to hear that the target market program is being examined to be able to have that target program. Building community wealth, research shows that it requires, one of the main pillars is for anchor institutions like the city of Minneapolis, opening the door for them to a much larger market, and for small businesses. And so everything that we do with spending really needs to be needs to be heavily considered in program development like this. And I know that y'all have already started to kind of examine and look at things, and I just wanted to make it a little bit more formal. And so, Mr. Chair would like to make a motion to create a staff direction for Finance, City Attorney's Office, and Civil Rights to work together and present options by August 31st. Does that feel like enough time for folks? Oh, well, that's fun. Well, I heard Mark say that like 3 months or so. So we'll go ahead and go with August 31st, 2018, that adapts the target market program to align with the city goal of equity by incorporating racial, gender, and geographic equity into the program within state statutes and federal laws.
All right, so we have a motion. Any discussion? Councilmember Palmisano?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just there might be a little bit of confusion as to where some of this work is housed. Because it's housed in the coordinator's office, I just wanted to ask our city coordinator to maybe give us a little bit of insight as to what work is already going on and what that plan is to bring it back and through what committee.
Sure. Chair Warsame, council members, committee members, I appreciate the opportunity, and if you'll indulge me in a moment and just thank staff. They were amazing getting this program up and running. We received a staff direction by then Council Vice President Glidden in 2015 when I first joined the coordinator's office to really take a look at our citywide efforts on supplier diversity. And we had an extensive, one of the most extensive staff directions I've seen in the city that really thought to bring together, just as Councilmember Cunningham has intended to do now as well, across departmental efforts. They asked the coordinator to bring together civil rights, finance, city attorney, and finance and property services to look at a variety of issues. We were charged with developing a work plan. We brought that forward. That work plan is always iterative. We had, for example, target market in year 3, and Council Vice President Glidden asked us to bring it forward in the first year. And so we switched around some of our work and managed to do that. So that group is ongoing. We continue to meet. We actually were just working recently on updating that work plan and plan to come back. This work of having that staff direction, it incorporates that staff direction, though happy to take that on. I perhaps request that it continue to flow through the supplier diversity work team so that we can manage that, but we will certainly put the timeline into that work and come back and report back just so that we have the flow of work coordinated. But we are expecting to come forward to Chair Palmisano for the Enterprise Committee in that and bring that update as well, just for all the work that we're doing, because it does carry over in a variety of departments.
Okay. Yes, Councilmember Cunningham.
First, is August 31st a realistic timeline for you and the team?
Chair Warsame and Councilmember Cunningham, yes, we can,
Awesome.
we can bring that.
Great, thank you. And I would like to amend my motion to say to report to by August 31st, 2018 to the Enterprise Committee.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you. All right.
Thank you, Councilmember Cunningham. And on Councilmember Cunningham's staff direction, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those against? It has moved. So thank you very much for that. And I think I would like to thank Councilmember Cunningham for his staff direction, because there was some, I think it incorporates a lot of the discussion that I had with Council Vice President Jenkins, incorporates some of the things that we talked about, having a target market program. So I think thank you very much for that. And have we finished with the presentation? All right. Thank you very much. You know, I would like to thank our wonderful Finance and Property Services Department staff who worked very hard for this. And it's very informative. I've learned so much today. And thank you very much for all your time and your effort. And I would love to make a motion to receive and file this report. And is there any discussions on the motion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against, that motion is passed. And thank you very much. And since I see no more work in front of us today, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.